Hi, Empress Justice here, and welcome to a subsection of Empress Justice Astrology called Empress Justice Magick. My astrology channel is where I explore the darker aspects of the occult and where I give fringe communities or vulnerable people and marginalized groups the tools they need to protect themselves. Now, black magic is a very complicated thing, and it's a lot more complicated than we think it is. And I'm not the type of person to skip over the boring stuff to get to the cool stuff. So today we're going to be talking about energetic harvesting and energetic siphoning. But before we get to that, I just want to remind you guys that my private services are 20% off for anyone who joins my mailing list on empressjusticetarot77@gmail.com. It's 20% off for anybody who gives me their full name and their email address. For Real Justice Tarot, that is for my targeted individual customers, for those who are Havana syndrome victims and sufferers of electrosensitivity. If you join that mailing list with your name, a recent selfie, your social media handles, and a testimony detailing your experiences, hopefully I brought up full name already, but I need your full name as well. You can email all of those details to realjusticetarot@gmail.com. And if you outline all of those things, you will get 25% off. I just want to make clear that you do not have to actually spend any money to join the mailing list. It is free to join, okay? And where Real Justice Tarot is concerned, the reason why I ask for all this information is so that I can properly vet that you are an actual targeted individual, as this is a very, very maligned community that is often infiltrated and often trolled. So I have to make sure, for my own safety and for the safety of other TIs who join the mailing list, that that particular mailing list is safe for targeted individuals and Havana syndrome victims and electrosensitivity sufferers. Okay, now that's out of the way, what is this video about? Again, this video is about energy harvesting and energy siphoning. Now, what is energy harvesting? Energy harvesting is simply feeding on energy through gaining people's attention. Okay, that's basically what energy harvesting is. When you pay attention to something, you give it energy. Energy is emotion in motion. When you emote towards something that you are paying attention to, even if you're not paying that much attention to something, when you pay attention to something, you are giving it your energy. So, for example, I've seen videos on YouTube talking about celebrities harvesting energy, and this is true, right? When they go on stage, a lot of the times they do perform rituals when they go on stage, and in order to magnify that ritual, they harvest as much attention and as much energy from the general public as possible. It is actually quite necessary for your magical works in order to harvest, to harvest energy, even if you're just harvesting your own energy and your own emotions. These things are important. The only thing that has to be understood here, though, is that you have to be careful what kind of energy you're harvesting for your own works. Where celebrities are concerned, or bigger organizations are concerned, when they use ancient symbology to trademark their companies, when they use, when celebrities or entertainers use ritualism as part of their, performance, and they're getting as many eyeballs on them as possible, they are harvesting energy, even careless, thoughtless attention that we're thinking nothing about. They're harvesting all of that. And the more meaningless the attention is the more of it that they actually need. So if we're like, for instance, if I'm looking at a Beyonce video for 30 seconds and it's just me looking at a Beyonce concert for 30 seconds, that's not going to be enough energy for her to harvest. She's going to need millions of eyes giving her 30 seconds of attention in order to harvest attention, or in order to harvest energy on that level. She needs 30 seconds of attention by millions of people. That's how this works. So energy harvesting is a thing where you need as many eyeballs on you as possible. The less, the less emotionally invested that attention is the more of it that you actually need. That's energy harvesting. That's energy farming. Politicians do it. Celebrities do it. People who are high profile do it. Multinational corporations do it through the symbolism that they use for their companies. So when you see all these conspiracy theorists talking about this stuff, they're not talking out their arse. They know what they're talking about. It's just that their language that they use and the fact that they're so oblivious to the fact that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism do the same fucking things. That's why nobody really takes those videos seriously. Okay? Now, that's energy harvesting. Energy siphoning works a little bit differently. And energy siphoning is where we get into fan territory. It's when we get into relationship territory. Basically, what you are doing is you are making your target feel as loved, cared for, and supported as possible. There was an example used by a YouTuber that I'm subscribed to. She used this example when talking about men siphoning energy from women. She said she used the example of stardust. All right. Now in stardust, there is a star called Yvonne. She's made manifest as a young woman. She comes down from the sky. She's basically in the form of this young woman, right? And in order, complex thing. So some witches are looking for the heart of a star to eat, because the heart of a star makes them more youthful, right? So in order to get the heart of the star to eat, the star has to be glowing, the star has to be shining. So what happens is that one witch disguises herself as an innkeeper, treats the star to all these beautiful, gives her basically the royal treatment, gives her a bath, pampers the hell out of her. Next thing you know, Yvonne, the star, is shining. And that's when the witch wants to take her opportunity to eat the heart of the woman. That's basically what siphoning is. It's making somebody feel good, feel fantastic, and then eating their heart out or snatching their heart out. Only with energy siphoning, it's a lot more metaphorical than that. You're making people feel good. You're love bombing them. You're making them feel special. And then once you have their energy, you siphon it away from them, either through wearing away their self-esteem so that they keep chasing that love that you made them feel, or you can straight up betray them. You can find some short, sharp way to send them crashing down, right? So that you get the best of their energy and they can't come back from that to give it to anyone else. So that's energy siphoning. You make people feel good, you love bomb the crap out of them, and then either you rob them of their confidence slowly but surely you chip away at them so they can't be anybody else's energy source, or you hit them with a short, sharp shock of heartbreak so that if they do become somebody else's energy source, they won't be able to recover as quickly. So that's energy siphoning, and that the first one is energy harvesting, and they operate in two different ways. Energy siphoning involves exploiting feelings of love, exploiting desire in order to really manifest as much energy as possible and then siphon it from the person, right? Now, there are a couple of disclaimers that I want to tell you guys about. The first one is this. I am going to be talking about energy siphoning and energy harvesting from the perspective of gangstalking. Now, the reason why I'm telling you guys this is because the way I describe energy harvesting and energy siphoning, it might sound like I'm actually trivializing the experience of TIs. That is not what I am doing. First of all, I've got to talk to you about what gangstalking is. Gangstalking is basically energy farming. It's energy farming specifically of people who are isolated, either by being unlawfully placed on watch lists, or being targeted by corporations, or being targeted by alchemical societies, secret alchemical societies. All of this is fact. Okay, so it's essentially energy farming. It's essentially energy harvesting and siphoning until the target dies. Now, their energy is harvested and siphoned, but well, it's harvested more than siphoned, but it's done through a myriad of ways. The first is through electronic torture. You've got voice of God technology being used to mimic the effects of paranoid schizophrenia. You've got directed energy weaponry designed to cause bodily damage. You know, I've got some wounds here, got some telltale wounds. Directed energy weaponry is used to harm the body. You've got microwave weaponry that perform the same function. There have been many people who have gotten cancer and died because of microwave weaponry. And then you have sonic weaponry, which is designed to actually hurt the body through ultrasound frequencies. And then you have ultrasound beam technology, which is used to change the frequency or change the brain signatures, you know, change the frequency of your brain so that you can elicit emotions, or so that you can feel emotions that are not actually coming from your own body. They're coming from your brain waves being manipulated, and that can be done remotely through technology as well. These technologies have been around for decades now. You're talking about since like not even since the 60s, you're talking about since like the 1930s at least, right? So these technologies have been around for a long time, and they've been experimented on fringe groups, small nations, marginalized communities for the longest now. All right, it's only now that we're actually talking about it and that we actually have a name for it. So that's the first component of gangstalking. The second component is stalking, break-ins and invasion of privacy, unlawful surveillance, bugging technology and bugging our homes, perusing social media for ammunition against all targeted individuals. And truth be told, a lot of targeted individuals do give people a lot of ammunition, because I don't know, like some of us act crazy. I know I have, right? And stalking can also involve unwanted contact on social media and in real life. Okay, there was one instance where a targeted individual had somebody sit down in front of her and actually tell her that the gang stalking was real, and they had the nerve to actually ask her if he could be her friend. This is the type of shit that we deal with. Okay, and then that's the second component, stalking, which is why it's called gang stalking. And the third component is harassment, cyber trolling, which strays into stalking. We've got directed conversation through two people. Two people might be having a conversation to themselves, but they will make reference to things that you've done in private, or make reference to things that are directly related to your flaws, because they want you to feel as self-conscious as possible. Sometimes they'll use NLP techniques like specific hand gestures. What I get is I get a tapping on the pocket a lot. So it's things like that are not only used for perpetrators to signal each other, it's also used to create a Pavlovian response in you to make you sensitized to specific gestures, so that you won't tell the difference between somebody who's a gang stalker and somebody who's a normal person, to gaslight you and heighten the effects of you feeling like you're going crazy. Okay, so there's directed conversation, and the NLP thing, what I talked about here, that is NLP techniques, and that is what's known as street theater. So that's part of the harassment. And then you've got noise pollution. You've heard it during some of my videos, doing lives, that these people upstairs sometimes will deliberately be loud when they know I'm filming, because they think the camera won't pick it up. Okay. And then you've got smear campaigns. Again, I've been subject to smear campaigns from my neighbors, and they've gone out of their way to, especially now, because I've been relatively quiet and relatively calm, So basically what they've been doing is they've been trying to get a rise out of me by any means necessary, by, you know, by attempting to imitate me. That's another NLP technique. Another, you know, attempting to imitate me, taunt me, shout things through the wall, play loud music, you know, all of that stuff. And then, you know, recently they kind of tried to imply that they were performing hexes on me. And truth be told, they might have done that. They might have done that. But like, it's the implication of it that's supposed to elicit a specific response in me. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about street theatre and noise pollution. So that's something else that targeted individuals go through. And the smear campaigns as well. Let me go back to that, because I've been quiet and I've been focusing on what I need to do. There's all this sort of, I'm scared for my life. So basically they've been going around, most likely because they've done it before, saying I'm scared for my life, I don't know what's happening, like, and they do it at the precise time when they know I've been quiet. Because there have been other times where I've responded to them and I've been loud as hell. In November, I threatened to whoop 4 of their asses. Not the children, but there were 4 adults. I threatened to whoop all of them. I said, look, let's go outside and let's settle it, right? So what they've done is they've used instances where they have successfully badgered me into a reaction. And the second that I'm quiet and the second that I'm keeping myself to myself, here comes the fear for their lives. Here comes the fear that something might happen to them. Persecution complex. I'll get to that in a second. Well, not in a second, but I will get to that. So that's what I'm talking about with the smear campaigns. Taunts from behind walls and doors, I've talked about that already. And gaslighting in front of your face. These people will do that behind my back. And then as soon as I talk to them to their face, they have no idea what's going on. They will downplay the situation. And, you know, it's not just them. It's a community-wide thing with specific individuals scattered throughout the community. Okay? So those are the 3 prongs, the 3 main prongs. There are others in gangstalking, but those are the 3 main prongs of gangstalking in relation to energy harvesting and energy siphoning, right? There are other things like honey traps and stuff like that. Energy siphoning, I will get to that. So, but those are the 3 main prongs of gangstalking that most people are familiar with. And these are just the basics. I haven't even gone into everything. Thus, this video is not designed to trivialize the torture. I'm just reading off this. Okay. This video is not designed to trivialize the torture, trafficking, and abuse of targeted individuals, which is lifelong. Okay. So people have died going through this. But to offer an alternate understanding of our situation and the situation of marginalized and vulnerable people. And seeing as gangstalking is inherently intersectional in nature, a person can interchangeably swap targeted individual with any marginalized, vulnerable, or fringe group one belongs to. So you can swap out targeted individual with being black, with being a person of color, with being a woman, with being a queer person, with being a trans person, with being mentally and emotionally vulnerable. Because, you know, mentally and emotionally vulnerable people are exploited a lot, even by people who think they're not bad people, right? It's true. It's the truth. So you can literally swap out targeted individual with anybody in society who is marginalized, fringe, or vulnerable. Okay? So that's my first disclaimer. The second disclaimer that I have with regards to energy harvesting and energy siphoning is that it is actually normal. Yeah, it's normal for us to borrow energy from each other. This is a normal thing. Now, this is why I call it the dark side, and this is why I call it magic and the dark side and primal, is because a lot of the evil going on in the world is due to normal stuff that is enabled for our own survival being exploited in order to take more than we need. That is why I call it primal. That is why I call it natural. That is why I call it normal. It's because these things that we are supposed to be doing anyway, it's these things that are natural that are taken to unnatural levels in order to maintain a hierarchy where people with the least to offer are at the top of the chain. So it's basically energy harvesting and energy siphoning is basically used to reverse the natural order where healthier people or more agreeable people are on top. Instead it switched that. It's made sure that people who are more at a deficit are the ones who have the most privilege. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So that's the second part. The second part of this disclaimer is that energy harvesting and energy siphoning are actual normal things that all living beings need to survive. I'm going to give you some examples, right? I'm going to explain why. As creatures with comparatively little fur, no claws, no feathers, and teeth meant for eating fruit, as creatures that are slower to self-sufficiency in infancy, social relationships are the most crucial for human survival. This doesn't just involve taking from one another and sharing with one another materially. It also involves doing the same energetically, i.e., emotionally. Because energy is energy in motion, right? Let me rephrase that, okay? Emotion is energy in motion. It's energy being focused in a particular direction. So us siphoning and harvesting from each other, both physically and emotionally, is actually a natural occurrence desired to help one another survive, to help the human race survive, right? It is a normal and natural thing. Let me explain. Speaking entirely in cis heteronormativity here, so my apologies to anyone else who feels left out. A man is born naturally and at an energetic deficit in comparison to a woman, because when we are all conceived, we're all female. A man, objectively, is a mutation, a necessary one, but a mutation. So in order for him to perform optimally and gather energy, he may need to siphon more energy from other people than a female would or that a woman would. And when he comes to adulthood, in order to perform optimally and gather energy, he needs to gather that from the female, right? Comparatively speaking, it doesn't mean he needs to completely drain her of all her stuff. Like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. In order to perform optimally and gather energy from a cis heteronormative perspective, he penetrates a woman in order to gather her energy. Not just physically, but emotionally too. So he penetrates her in both senses to siphon energy from her when she is at her peak, right? So it's a natural thing to actually do that, to reinforce himself, because when he's reinforced, he can actually optimally give her a baby, like from an optimal perspective. Once he has her energy, he can fortify his own sperm. When he puts that sperm into her, he's giving her optimized energy. So they're basically, she's giving him optimized energy. And from that optimized energy, he's giving it back to her through putting a child in her, right? Because once the child is in you, the child doesn't just take from you. It also provides healing energy of its own. That's what nobody tells you. That's why the health of the man is just as important as the health of the woman. Because depending on who is impregnating you, that child might not even just be taking from you. That child might be giving you healing on top of that. Again, nobody ever thinks about the man, but let me continue. So the siphoning of energy through orgasm, siphoning of energy through treating a woman well, all of these things are necessary for a man to exist optimally from a cis heteronormative perspective here, right? So When, you know, when that happens, the woman gives him a baby, the woman gives him life. So what he does in order to replenish her energy, he makes sure that she is as relaxed, happy, and comfortable as possible, that she doesn't have to work too hard. That is the whole purpose of that energetic exchange. He takes her energy and does something productive with it, and he gives her the very best that he can so that she can replenish her energy. So this whole thing of energy harvesting and energy siphoning is completely normal. It's completely normal. It's completely natural. It's something that's supposed to happen. What's not supposed to happen is that this energy siphoning is used to basically fulfill a hierarchical structure that is based upon having people who are the most deficit spiritually and soul-wise at the fucking top. It's not supposed to be like that. That's where it's unnatural. That's where it's not supposed to be a certain way. But let me continue. Another example is the kind of energetic exchange that is between grandparents and grandchildren. Now, this one is not often talked about or often explored, right? When a parent has a baby, when two parents have a baby, like, there are supposed to be communal environments for a reason, or communal villages for a reason. It's because the elders of the community, they actually gain vitality just from being in the presence of children or in the presence of their grandbabies. Just being in the presence of their grandbabies, or any elders being in the presence of children, like just hanging out with kids, like just doing normal stuff like painting and, you know, and you know, cooking and all that good stuff, right? For a grandparent to be in the presence of children is also harvesting their energy, siphoning off children's energy. You do that by giving them lots of love, by giving them lots of attention, by being gentle, by being lovely. Like you give these children, you siphon these children's energy by being loving towards them and being kind towards them. And then in turn, they give you that energy, and the cycle continues, because then the grandparents are doting on the grandbabies. So it creates this very healthy cycle of energy siphoning and energy replenishment. That is how it's supposed to be. The people with the most energy are siphoned from through kindness, through love, and through devotion. Again, I'm going to come back to Stardust, right? I'm going to come back to that in a second. The people with the most energy to give are siphoned from through love, through kindness, through generosity of spirit, all that wonderful stuff. And then through kindness and generosity, their energy is replenished through kind treatment, materially, through being loving, through being affectionate, through being devoted, through, you know, through providing material comfort, security, and not just that, also affection, not just acts of service and not just giving money, but through actual kindness and protection and love and like that type of stuff. That is the cycle that we're talking about when we talk about energetic siphoning. So this shit is normal. It's supposed to happen. Again, though, what is not supposed to happen is the energetically deficient is not supposed to create this hierarchy where people with the most to offer energetically are at the bottom. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be like a mutual exchange of energy, right? So yeah, when it comes to grandparents and grandchildren, children are pure and lend incredible amounts of energy to both elders and adults just by being present and happy. Whilst the siphoning grandparents and adults replenish the children through patience, kindness, and caregiving. That is how it is supposed to be. But instead, we've got a hierarchy based upon taking more energy and more resources than we actually need. And that is what causes abuse in the world. That is what causes energy harvesting and energy siphoning. That is why we have like celebrities on stage doing rituals on stage and harvesting energy from millions of people. That's how we have public figures siphoning energy from their fan base. That is how we have systemic injustice in the world, which is energetic harvesting as well as physical harvesting. Because people are out here taking more than they need. All right? So those are two disclaimers. This is why it's called the dark side. Because the dark side is murky. The dark side is not as simple. It's not black and white. You know, a lot of the things that people do in order to, you know, to enact violence against each other, like it starts from things in nature that all of us need to be doing anyway in order to survive. It's just that those survival instincts are taken to a level of violence. Okay? Now, let's get to the reason why we're all here. Okay? So, fringe communities, vulnerable communities, and marginalized communities are harvested and siphoned from by the rest of society. In fact, the more marginalized you are, is the more it's about harvesting rather than siphoning. Because again, siphoning involves love bombing. So, fringe, vulnerable, and marginalized communities are harvested from by the rest of society, and directly, and in the case of targeted individuals and trafficking and abuse victims, they're directly siphoned and harvested from those assigned to be their main handlers or their main abusers. This is especially the case for targeted individuals. How is this done? The harvesting part, like I explained, simply means gaining the attention of a targeted individual by any means necessary. The most relatable form of this can be a simple microaggression, using like pleasant things or good things as a way to weaponize, you know, as a way to weaponize against you. Like, for example, a simple good morning, right? In any normal circumstances, a good morning is a good morning. It's not a weapon. It's not something that is used against you. But when you're a targeted individual, and I've experienced this, there were people walking, you know, I was walking along like a road up here, and there were 3 separate old white men saying good morning to me. And now I was absent-minded. I didn't give a shit what they were doing. But they, you know, they said good morning and they had that stupid smirk on their face. So it's things like that as a targeted individual, like a simple good morning. Like, these people have done it too. These people have tried the friendly shit with me after calling me all kinds of N-words through the war. Pleasantries can be a form of weaponization against you. That's one way they harvest your energy. It's by getting your attention, even through good means, right? Completely banal, seemingly innocent and innocuous behavior that can be weaponized as microaggressions to harvest energy from a targeted individual, let alone such things as mimicry, usually non-verbal but can be verbal, and that can go into destiny swapping territory. I'll explain more about that in another video. And then we've got taunts, insults, trolling, or even using V2K or remote torture. Harvesting involves fishing for any scrap of attention from our enemies to feel boosted by it. Hence, only they are the ones gaining the most satisfaction from it. Okay, so this is not just with targeted individuals. This is also with Black people, especially Black people, brown people, anyone considered to be other in a white supremacist world. And the reason why I say harvesting is more likely than siphoning is because this is the thing. When you have enemies, right, and you have no intention of treating those enemies with any respect or any love or anything like that, you actually get less energy from somebody you're harvesting from than somebody you're siphoning from. You're actually getting less energy from harvesting than you are from siphoning. So what's the solution to that? The solution to that is to keep bombarding said enemies of white supremacy by like doing any little piece of shit thing to get their attention. This can involve dehumanization. This can involve smear campaigns. This can involve like a number of things. So all of it, the bombardment of negativity is about harvesting as much energy from the TI or from the marginalized group as possible. especially TIs, because TIs are a relatively small group. You're not about to, you know, unless you've got honey traps, which are not that common even among TIs, right? Unless you've got honey traps coming in, you're not about to siphon energy from TIs. So what's the best way to do it? The best way to do it is to keep bombarding TIs, like to get attention from them every spare moment that you can manage. That's the way that you do it. You have to do it that way, because not only is positive energy more magnified than negative energy, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is how likely are you to get positive energy from targeted individuals, or black people or brown people or women or queer people, when they know exactly what you're doing to them? How likely is it that you're going to get positive love and attention from you abusing them? It's not likely, is it? So of course you've got to keep bombarding them with negative energy, maybe give them a break occasionally, but even then the good things that you do have to be weaponized in order to get some little scrap or any piece of crap attention from your enemies. With enemies, you have to keep bombarding them in order to get their attention and in order to harvest energy from them. With your enemies, you've got to keep bombarding them. That's the only way that you're actually able to harvest energy from them, because you're not going to siphon from the same people who don't want you anywhere near them. You're not going to do that, right? So the more marginalized you are, the more you're considered an enemy, is the more you are going to be harvested. That's the reason for bullying. That's the reason for harassment. That can even be the reason for stalking. The more somebody hates you and the more somebody considers you an enemy emotionally, is the more they're going to harvest energy from you, because siphoning it, they can't siphon it. You get more when you siphon, but they can't siphon from you if you've decided you want nothing to do with them. So, you know, that's the reason for like a lot of abuse out there. And truth be told, a lot of people don't know about energy siphoning or energy harvesting. So 9 times out of 10, these people are likely to do it subconsciously, not realizing, why do I get such a rush when I try to antagonize my enemies and I need more of that rush? It's because it's energy harvesting, because you're at a deficit. Because you're at a deficit, right? And if you keep feeling the need to badger your enemies, it means that spiritually you're at a deficit, or soul-wise you're at a deficit, or both. It means within yourself there is a chasm that needs to be filled, and you feel like the only way to fill that is to drain more energy from other people. This is usually the case with people with antisocial personality disorders, but really, because of the way the structure is set up, you can engage in this behavior without ever like having any of those antisocial personality traits, right? And you can usually tell who is the most spiritually or soul bankrupt by how far they will go just to harvest your energy, which is about as low level as it gets. With gangstalkers, this can manifest as more racially, sexually, or spiritually charged abusiveness. So that could be racial slurs, or you know, constant reference to your private parts, or constant abuse of your private parts. It can result in hexes, curses, or weaponizing religion against you in order to try to keep you in your place and, you know, keep you from talking about your abuse, right? You can even have creatively charged abusiveness. Like, for instance, there's a song saying, I'm a gangstalker, baby. That's a creatively led abuse, because you're basically mocking and making fun of people who are targeted individuals. So that is creatively led abuse, creating songs, artwork, creating memes, basically disrespecting targeted individuals and assuming all of them to be on meth or paranoid schizophrenic. So that type of stuff, like creatively led, creatively charged abusiveness, because you have to have a certain amount of emotion put into something in order to, create creatively charged abusiveness, right? It can be song, writing, or artwork. Smear campaigns are another way of harvesting more energy than TIs. But this is the thing. Giving attention to the smear campaigns that your enemies create, they're not just harvesting energy from you, they're also harvesting and siphoning energy from the people that they enlist to do their dirty work. So let's just say, for example, these perps up here, right? What they will do is they will go to anybody who feels the slightest bit of sympathy for them and say, this big black lady is attacking me, or this big black lady is scaring me. She's scary. She's scary. Like that's their go-to. She's scary, right? So what they will do is they will talk to people who sympathize with their plight, either because they're white racists themselves or because they don't know the family very well and all they see is a scared family. So what they will do is they will use smear campaigns not only to harvest energy from you and get your attention, but they will also harvest and siphon energy from the people who believe them and from the people who indulge them. So these perps are not just harvesting energy from you when they engage in smear campaigns. They're harvesting and siphoning energy from people who are stupid enough to believe them and stupid enough to side with them. So they have even more fortified energy to come at you with, just so that they can try to put you, they do all of this just to put you at an energetic deficit. And again, people don't know about this. So they're doing this unconsciously to drain you. They're doing this unconsciously to drain you. They're not, they want you to be drained, sure, but they don't know that's what that is, right? So all of this is unconscious. So, this is why narcissistic people or people with these traits don't like to be by themselves unless they have no other choice, because they always need an energy supply. They always need a supply of spiritual and soul energy aimed towards, they always need to feed on that. Do you understand? They always need to feed on other people's destiny, and this is the thing that this is the dread thing that nobody takes into consideration. When you are around a narcissistic person that is draining your spirit, your emotions, and draining your soul, all your actions are dedicated towards pleasing, and that fucks with your destiny. That fucks with your destiny. So not only are these people energetically sucking out the people who are stupid enough to care about them, they're affecting those people's destinies as well as yours. This is the thing that nobody talks about. They're affecting your destiny too. That's what people at the top, all the way at the top of the chain, are ultimately doing with millions, no, not even millions, billions of people. They're affecting God knows how many people's destinies with this shit. With the shit that they do. They are basically stealing destinies from billions of people in order to fulfill their own or have some semblance of a destiny of their own. And when it comes to perps, when it comes to perpetrators within gang stalking against TIs, they're not just stealing the destinies of TIs, they're stealing the destinies of all those on their side as well. It's dread. It's fucking dread. Like the type of energy harvesting and energy siphoning that I'm talking about is a violent act. Now, violence is the key to energy siphoning and energy harvesting. What is violence? Noun. Behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. Number 2, strength of emotion or of a destructive natural force. Bullying you with strength of emotion or trying to evoke strength of emotion is a key part, a key component in energy harvesting and energy siphoning. Second thing, what is hurt? 2, be detrimental to. So energy harvesting and energy siphoning, the kind that I'm talking about, is ultimately to harm you. to take something from you. What is damage? Verb. To inflict harm on something, to impair. Listen to this. To inflict harm on something as to impair its value, usefulness, or normal function. The only time when somebody is satisfied with the harvesting, with the energy that they have harvested or siphoned from you, is when you are no longer doing the same things that you used to, when you are no longer in control of your emotions or your actions. Because if you're not in control of either of these things, you are not in control of your destiny. And you're no longer in control of what you manifest. This is important. If you're not in control of your actions or your emotions, if you are not aligned with them, if you don't have a good relationship with your soul and with your spirit, what you manifest is affected. Again, we live in a world where people know exactly what they're doing. Let me continue. So when I say it's a violent act, harvesting and siphoning energy, the kind that I'm talking about, is a violent act by people who are born with an already existing spiritual or soul deficit. They don't know who they are. Energy harvesting and siphoning energy more than you need, it proves that you are spiritually and soul deficit and you don't know who the fuck you are. Now, people who harvest and siphon energy more than, hold on. People who harvest and siphon more energy than needed through gangstalking or any form of society-backed bigotry do so usually because of an over-identification. Listen to this. I've written this down. I ate with this. Okay. People who harvest or siphon more energy than needed through gangstalking or any form of society-backed bigotry do so usually because of an over-identification with their physical being and their material environment, fearing to look beneath any of those things to find absolutely nothing. And the more privileged a person is through their physical demographic and through the material status they've been given because of their physicality, the more acute this phenomenon tends to be. When you over-identify with your physical being, manifesting more means of physical survival such as social clout, societal privilege. Hold on 1 second. I've got to let them do what they're doing. Sorry, I've got to let them do what they're doing. So when you over-identify with your physical being, manifesting more means of spiritual survival such as social clout, societal privilege, wealth, health, and beauty become increasingly important, and hierarchical structures within this world of white supremacy are built to facilitate this. Now, this is where gangstalking comes in. Given the political leanings, the right, that benefit from gangstalking and the multitude of brands, corporations, and alchemical societies, it's one of the best kept secrets in every major empire. Almost everyone benefits short term from the ideals of TIs in particular, making us an ultra fringe community. We're the only community where everybody, regardless of what group they belong to, will deny us. Not because our struggle isn't real, but because everybody, doesn't matter who you are, benefits from it short term. Okay? Now, being a TI, and belonging to any marginalized group, siphoning through love bombing is actually less likely than obvious attention-seeking harvesting. There are things called honey traps that exist. There are TIs who have been honey trapped, who have been love bombed and then been either handled or they've been, you know, even worse, you know, there's one TI that I know that was trafficked after being love bombed by somebody. So siphoning energy is entirely possible within the TI community. It's happened more than once. There's another TI that I know that was, you know, made to marry somebody, emotionally connect with somebody to marry them, only for that person to take everything from that man. So like siphoning energy from TIs does happen, but it's less likely than the obvious attention seeking harvesting, which is why we tend to be subject to more isolation and in some cases brutality. If you've already been targeted outright with negativity and violence, love bombing isn't going to work immediately after. It's not going to work unless you've already formed a connection or you've already been love bombed. The love bombing has to precursor the abuse. It's not going to work the other way around. 9 times out of 10, it does not work the other way around. Okay? The love bombing has to come first when energy is being siphoned. Then self-worth must be eroded through careful and gradual picking apart of one's flaws until they are hollowed out and with no sense of self. Energy harvesting and energy siphoning, even though they differ in method, they're trying to operate with the same principle. Take your destiny away from you. Take your agency away from you. Take your manifestation power away from you. Okay? This is actually done more to those with the siphoning thing, energetic siphoning. If you look at the YouTube videos, who are talking about energetic siphoning? What do they look like? People who talk, the women who talk about energetic siphoning are usually attractive women. They are usually attractive women who are self-sufficient, or have their own money, have their own this, have their own that. Like, they're usually attractive, very well financed, sophisticated in some way, educated in some way, raised well. Those are usually the type of women who are siphoned from their energy. That is because siphoning is more likely to be done to people of privilege than marginalized folks. I know, okay? Listen, marginalized communities can be siphoned too. I'm not saying that we can't. I've given examples with TIs, right? We can be siphoned too, but the siphoning is more likely to happen with privileged people or those who are privilege aligned. We've seen this with Trump supporters. Trump supporters were siphoned from. I understand you. I get you. These immigrants coming in here, taking your jobs. These immigrants coming in here, not legal. You know, these black people and brown people eating cats and dogs. Yeah, well, I get you. I understand you. And now look at what Trump is doing to his supporters. Black, brown, and white. So this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say energetic siphoning is more likely to happen to privileged people than marginalized people. And again, look at the perps that I have. These perps, like from a metaphorical perspective, had these fucking Nazis going down on them. Had these bosses, like, you know, stroking their little egos and saying, oh no, we don't want to harm you. We don't want to harm you. And yet they will leave these perps to the wolves. They will, you know, they will fatten up the perps, fatten them up with things to feed their ego, fatten them up with bribes. And the next thing you know, they have to target a TI, and the TI starts telling the truth about what's going on. So their energy, the energy of the perps, has been siphoned, not from us, because we're over here harvesting. They're not being siphoned from us. They're being siphoned from the people who hired them. Because the people who hired them had to feed their ego first. And again, with regards to us harvesting energy, that's completely unconscious. That's not what we're trying to do. That's not what TIs are trying to do at all. But we end up doing it anyway, and I'll explain why in a few moments, okay? People with privilege are a lot more likely to be siphoned because one's ego must be fed to the point of being radiant, then they are feasted upon by the same people who flattered them. This happens with golden children within the family. This happens with authorities. Hold on. I said authorities. Let me check my writing. This happens with golden children within the family. This happens with celebrities, and this definitely happens with perps. Again, I've seen this in action. As a result of perps having their energy siphoned from by the people who hired them, I've seen in action perps who have let their physical and personal care go by the wayside. I've seen them mentally degenerate to the point where at least a couple of them have been sectioned. There's one perp that was assigned to hire me, and I think this perp had pre-existing like mental health issues anyway that were quite bad. But ever since they came after me, they ain't been the same since. They ain't been right since. And again, that's not due to me. It's not due to anything that I've done, because all I've done is tell the truth. But they haven't been right since they came after me. They ain't been right since. Do you understand what I'm saying? There was one like, there was one perp who tried to relay a message to me that they were married and shit like that. But like when they were in close proximity to me, they had to sign themselves into hospital because of the stress. But it wasn't me that did that. It was their bosses that did that. Siphoned energy from them. Yeah. So this is the thing. Perps are bolstered up to the, perps and anybody in a position of privilege are bolstered up to the point of feeling safe and validated, then eroded with lies, gaslighting, and threats from the same people that bolstered their egos. Okay. And, whilst they're getting all that from the people that bolstered their ego, they're getting anger and disgust from the people that they've targeted. So they're getting it in both directions. They're getting harvested from, with regards to the people who hate them, and they're being siphoned from with regards to the people who boosted their egos. So they're getting it on both sides. So they were already spiritually and soul deficit. They were already in deficit. Now they've attracted more of the same thing, which is why they tend to come after. They tend to target their enemies that much harder. In this case, it's us, it's TIs, right? So I've seen firsthand the degradation in physical and mental health of the perps, even with the continued harvesting of TI energy with increasingly violent means. Going back to the harvesting of TI energy, after a certain amount of time of having our energies harvested, our emotional responses go into lockdown, meaning after a while we become desensitized to like the street theater and the harassment, to the point where they will go crazy trying to taunt us and trying to come down on us. And it just won't work with us. Like, we'll just ignore them, or we just won't feel anything when they try to do certain things. What they like to do is they like to slam the door, because my bed is right here, right? And the front door's there. So what they like to do is they like to slam the door to try to startle me. Getting my heart rate up. Again, that's another form of attempted murder, but we won't go there. But yes, they will try any means of gaining attention from you, knowing that you're ignoring them. And the more you ignore them is actually the more violent they get. There was this saying from our elders when I was a kid, because, the adults back then were lazy and didn't want to do shit. Every time I was being bullied, I was told to ignore them because they were fucking lazy and they didn't want to handle it. They didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to deal with the bullying. They just wanted to deal with me and make me the issue, right? So that was the one thing that they always told you. Just ignore them. Just ignore them. They'll get bored. Just ignore them. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work like that. 9 times out of 10, these people don't back off after you get bored. It's after they get bored, or, you know, they don't just get bored and leave you alone 9 times out of 10, especially when they have antisocial personality disorders or borderline personality disorders or some form of low emotional regulation. It doesn't work like that. The only thing that works is you being apart from them, distant from them. That's the only thing that works. Or they get their ass beat. That's the only thing that works. But unfortunately, TIs are backed into a corner where all they can really do, if they don't want to get, you know, all they can really do sometimes is just ignore the people. Like, just go about their day and just ignore them, right? And that's where the perps start getting violent. And this doesn't just happen to TIs. Again, this happens to all marginalized and fringe communities. You know, our energy is harvested so much from us to the point where we just shut down and we just ignore everything and we just rest and we just focus on ourselves and focus on replenishing ourselves. Again, this is a normal, natural thing that happens. It's not something that we choose. It's an instinctive thing that we end up doing. And when that happens, you know, when that happens, we end up either alchemizing the negativity that's thrown at us. We either end up alchemizing it, or we just stop paying attention. Now, in my experience, this is where gangstalkers accuse you of being asleep. That's their code word. When you stop paying attention and you stop being sensitized to them, or you're not aware of what's going on, they compare it to being asleep. That's another weaponization tactic. They compare it to being asleep. Like I said, when you're a targeted individual, they weaponize anything and everything to make it look negative. So when you ignore them and when you do what you're supposed to be doing, they call that being asleep, right? Because you're not letting them feed off you. So to combat this state of sleep, right, you ignoring them, 3 main strategies are employed. Number 1, they vary the intensity of the abuse within an abuse cycle. So you've got, like, you know, the stage where it's just starting up, the stage where it reaches peak, and the stage where it's the apology stage, and then you get into the quiet stage. So they keep it in a cycle, and they keep the cycles unpredictable, so that we don't get too used to the abuse and we don't become too comfortable to the point where we can actually function in the midst of their bullshit. So that's the varying the intensity of the harvesting within an abuse cycle. The second method is, I said I would get to this, is the persecution complex. So number 1 is varying the intensity of the harvesting within the abuse cycle. They do this with TIs, Black people, brown people, queer people, women, indigenous communities, any fringe, vulnerable or marginalized community. Vary the abuse cycle and vary the times when those abuse cycles begin and end. All right. So the second thing is persecution complex. So the more you stay quiet and the more you focus on self-care and the more you focus on, just doing what you need to do for yourself, there will be additional demands made on you to give your enemies attention. For example, with Black people in America saying, we're not going to any protests, we're sitting this one out. That, you've got other communities of people demanding them to act, demanding them to step forward and put themselves in danger. So that's one form of the persecution complex. The second form of the persecution complex is painting the resting or, painting the withdrawal person as a heartless, emotionless perpetrator of violence, like these people do with me. Like, because I won't give them the negative energy that they're looking for, and it's not just them that have done it, it's also perps in London that have done this. Every single time they try to get to me and they can't get to me, they say, oh, it's like she hasn't got any feelings, it's like she hasn't got any emotions. Bear in mind, they've watched me grieve over my dead mother, which they've repeatedly mocked. They've called me the crying N-word because of how much that I was crying over one thing or another. But suddenly when I won't give them the attention they want, I haven't got feelings anymore. Persecution complex. She's heartless. She's heartless. Yes. Persecution complex. That's the second way of you know, talking about that. The third way is the most dangerous. Behaving behaving as if you being quiet and you being quiet and you staying to yourself and you like minding your business is you getting ready to attack, or you getting ready for war, or you getting ready to harm somebody. So if they can't get you to make threats, they will make up that you've actually threatened them in some way. If they can't get you to, like in my case, they couldn't get me to hex them, so they started making stuff up about me hexing them, right? They couldn't get me to, to start shouting and screaming or fighting, so that they will make stuff up about how they don't feel safe. So that's the third way they engage in a persecution complex, and that's the most dangerous because it has actually gotten people killed. There are people who have been killed for less than what they accuse you of in a persecution complex. All of that because they can't harvest your energy. And then the third thing is the most obvious. Increasingly violent or inciting behavior, screaming, shouting, taunts, following you to try to start a fight and shit. Like, that's the third prong of, trying to reclaim control or harvest energy from people who are no longer giving it. Like increasingly violent or inciting behavior. All right. This is especially employed when you put perps or abusers in a position where they cannot get close enough to love bomb you. This is important. If they can't get close enough to love bomb you and you're actually not giving them any attention, that three-prong approach that I talked about, that becomes more intensified. In terms of positive interactions, all they can do is weaponize those to deliberately piss you off, and even then there's no guarantees. Okay? Whew. Now we come to the part where Empress Justice Magick is Empress Justice Magick, okay? Energy harvesting and siphoning is used heavily by occultists and those who are witches, which is why a good chunk of them usually preemptively dismiss gangstalking before anyone brings it up. And I've seen this in occult groups. There are occultists who know damn well that they've been energy harvesting and energy siphoning through gangstalking. So what they do is they preemptively talk about like gangstalking victims, preemptively discredit gangstalking victims in these occult spaces, so that other people are none the wiser. And when people start talking about gangstalking, then those people talking about gangstalking are dismissed as crazy. All of this is strategic. And I say this as somebody who studies the occult and is a witch herself. That's one of the reasons why a lot of TIs are Christian and don't fuck with the craft, because the craft has been used against them. Me, I love this shit too much. I'm sorry. I'm very like, yo. And it's even been used against me. That's why a lot of perps get very, very scared when I start employing the craft in my own life. Remember, every accusation is a confession. Why are they scared of me performing magic if they wouldn't perform magic to hurt me? And it's been done several times. Either they've alluded to performing hexes against me, or they've actually tried to perform hexes against me to protect themselves and to cover their ass. So what they're thinking is, she must be doing the same thing we're doing. She must be doing the same shit. And I've explained in another video on one of my other channels that why is it okay for you to attack people unprovoked, and it's not okay for somebody who's spiritually minded to protect themselves? I've said that before. And because I've said that, now it's oh, she's hexing us, she's cursing us. I'm like, bro, like, you're literally trafficking and abusing me, and this is a lifelong thing. But this is the thing with them. Every accusation is a confession. When they accuse you of being heartless because you don't care whether they're upset or not, these are the same people that call me the crying N-word, for fuck's sake. These are the same people who, you know, who were screaming, "Ma'am, ma'am," because I was literally screaming in pain and grief from my mother being murdered by gang stalking. These are the same people. So of course, when they get upset, when they start crying that I won't give them that attention, of course they're going to accuse me of being heartless. They were heartless. You know what I mean? They were heartless. And when they accuse, you know, they accuse you of making threats and this, like that. And don't get me wrong, I threatened to beat some people's ass. I'm not going to lie. But like, when you're quiet and, you know, and they assume that you're planning something or you're working on something or you're up to something, remember your whole home is bugged. So there are people who know full well what's going on and know full well that you ain't planning anything. But this is what the perps do. When they're quiet, they're working on another campaign. They're working on another smear campaign. They're working on another... Do you understand what I'm saying? They're working on another smear campaign. They're working on another way to weaponize normal interactions against you. That's what they do when they're quiet. So they accuse you of doing the same thing. Every accusation is a confession. That's one thing you have to remember with these people and with anything that got what they got through bigotry. Whatever they accuse you of is whatever it is the fuck they're doing. And it's as simple as that, okay? You know, and that's why people in occult communities preemptively bring up gang stalking, because they're benefiting from it or they're directly involved in it. There are some high profile people who have been involved in gang stalking, and I've posted a link talking about that shit. Okay. This is the thing. If they directly or indirectly benefit from the energy of TIs and other fringe communities, then why would they want people to take their targets seriously? The second they take their target seriously, they don't have that energy to harvest anymore. Right? They don't have that energy to harvest for their manifestation work or for, you know, for simply existing. So why would they want us being taken seriously? Why would they want any marginalized people being taken seriously when we say we're being killed off? Because then there's no more energy. You can't harvest energy from us because there are God knows how many other people who will block you from doing that. So it's preemptive. Everything they do is preemptive. Let me continue though. The ancient creed of the Magi or the Magi are to know, dare, well, and shut the fuck up. Okay? And both highly privileged and powerful occultists and occultists within gang stalking know this all too well. Part of the ancient creed of Magick is to shut the fuck up. So of course, before TIs can say anything and say this is what's happening to us, powerful occultists will step in and redirect or redivert conversations about gang stalking and conversations about racism and conversations about misogyny and conversations about queerphobia. They will redirect those conversations because they know they're getting not just physically fed by these things, but energetically fed by these things, spiritually fed by these things, for not only their general lives, but also their manifestation work to make sure that they can accomplish their desires. You understand? All right. Now, plus, on top of the mundane work, like I've written down here, regular stuff, harvesting and siphoning energy is all too good for manifestation. Isolated and preferably debilitated targeted individuals as long as we are alive, remember this is slow kill torture, provides an endless and steady supply of energy to a wide range of narcissists strung out on energy and validation addiction, people who need energy sources to attain success in life, or people who need energy for their magical works. Read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. He touches on this. He touches on this. Like in a more indirect way, but he touches on it. Read that book. All right. However, sometimes one can fall on their own sword, and gangstalking is no different. And this is where I get to the interesting part. Because whether we plan it or not, whether we want it or not, it's only a matter of time before the balance of power shifts. Now, it doesn't happen immediately. That's why people don't catch on. But it can happen over several lifetimes. It can happen over several generations. But time doesn't favor anybody. Time favors no one. Time is justice. Time is justice, and time is the ultimate conqueror. They don't give a fuck who you are. If the balance of power needs to be readdressed, then it's going to be readdressed at some point. And all these people at the top can do is delay that as long as they can. That's the only thing they can do. They can't stop it, right? Sometimes one can fall on their own sword, and gangstalking is no different. When perps, gangstalkers, or bigots of any kind push your spirit and soul to the point where you are desensitized to them, the results can literally cause them pain. I've talked about this on one of my other channels. They can be caused literal pain, social pain, from you just being desensitized. It hurts them. Let me continue. When people are socially excluded, the parts of our brain most affected are the anterior cingulate cortex, the part for emotional regulation, motivation, and decision-making, the anterior insular cortex, decision-making and pain, and the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, which is for motor function, conflict monitoring, task difficulty, and error detection. In other words, social rejection impairs the ability to trust ourselves and to get things right, but it also causes us literal pain and weakens our heart and muscles to boot. Now, this happens with a lot of victims of abuse, a lot of victims of bullying, but after a while, what happens is that when people in a position of privilege or people who benefit from the abuse get a fraction of that energy back, they get just as much weakness, just as much pain, just as much agony as what they put their enemies through. Just by us withdrawing, they get just as much agony as they've caused us with the social pain, on a fraction of what they've done to us. That's the first thing. Second thing is, targeted individuals, before I get to the second part, targeted individuals and anybody marginalized are caused this pain through having everything weaponized against them and their rightful claims of murderous torture being used as a smoking gun to traffic them into psychiatry and make their ordeal worse, so that they can be sitting ducks that literally become batteries for people with antisocial personality disorders and people who are abusive. We become batteries to them when we are put through the psychiatric industrial complex, right? Perps, on the other hand, experience this same pain. Perps, or anybody who benefits from bigotry, experience this same pain through simply telling the truth, even when no one believes us, and simply through TIs ignoring them. So just by withdrawing and telling the truth, it causes them God knows how much pain. When they get increasingly violent, that's what they're fighting. They're fighting the pain, right? Then we have to consider that this is, hold on, before I read that next part, this is why I wanted to make clear that I wasn't taking gang stalking for granted. We still suffer more than they do because we have more brutality inflicted on us. But you got to understand, when these people, when we start telling the truth, it doesn't matter how crazy we look, they end up hurting. Literally. That's why they get so violent. Now, then we have to, hold on, then we have to consider that all this additional attention we get, because that's what we're getting additional attention. Ironically, through ignoring these people, we get additional attention, right? And us getting additional attention through the perps' increasingly desperate and abusive behavior, it not only puts us in a position where we are unwittingly harvesting their energy. Oh, hold on. I know, pause. I know, because we're getting their attention. They're increasingly trying to get a rise out of us. So we are increasingly getting attention to harvest. And it was completely unwitting. In our case, it's completely unwitting. That's not what we're trying to do, but that's what ends up happening to us. The more we ignore them is the more violent they get. That's the more energy that they actually feed us. This is not a joke, bruh. And even when they were like at the peak of getting reactions and responses out of us, we were still harvesting their energy. We were still harvesting energy from multiple people, because it took, you know, having them pay attention to us in order to get those responses to begin with. And it was multiple people. Think about how much energy we get as TIs every single fucking day. Think about how much energy we get to harvest. Why do you think the prayers of so many TIs can sometimes bring results? Not even rituals, prayers alone. Because I've got to get into this next part. Not only are we getting all this, harvested energy, right, without us even trying or want to, not only are we getting more attention, we're able to, which we're able to alchemize and turn into something else. Also, this is a controversial point that I want to bring up. And it's this same thing that has often been used to justify torture. Please understand that when I say this, I'm not using it to justify torture. I am using it to illustrate a point, right? Controversially, the pain that TIs go through and the pain that marginalized people go through, it actually purifies our karma. It purifies our karma. So not only are we getting additional energy through the additional bullying that we are getting from withdrawing, not only are we getting the additional energy from that, our karmas are being purified with the additional abuse that we're getting. When I tell you that perps are so fucking lucky that most targeted individuals do not want to create magical spells against them. When I tell you that perps are very fucking lucky that the only thing a lot of TIs want to do is pray, you'll know that I'm telling the truth. In terms of energetic, and pure energy, in terms of harvested energy and pure energy, targeted individuals sit on a gold mine. And either they're too debilitated to use it or they're too distracted to use it. The perps are very fucking lucky. That's all I'm saying. And when it comes to people who benefit from bigotry and who use bigotry, they don't know how lucky they are either. They don't know. All right. And again, none of this is an excuse for torture or slow murder, but this simply illustrates that our abusers would have been better off just leaving us alone to begin with and trying to find their own destiny instead. Okay. Harvested energy plus purified karma allows for greater mundane and magical manifestation, even when, for the most part, TIs will actively not perform rituals. Again, we're sitting on a gold mine. that we're either too, a lot of us are either too debilitated to use or too distracted to use. But the perps are, again, everything that the perps do, like everything that's being done with regards to energetic warfare is literally unwitting. It's unwitting. It's unwitting. But the people at the top know. They keep us debilitated and distracted so that we cannot use the gift of harvested energy and purified karma to shift our destinies. They know what they're doing. All right. Now, let's see. This is one of the main reasons why gangstalking is objectively not successful and has never been successful. Gangstalking has been done at the end of every empire, and it has never been successful because there have always been people who have been alive to tell the tale. And now, living in the modern age, there are records of gangstalking, and not just from us, but from governments that have actually employed it, and the AI has taken in all of that. So this is never going away. This is never going away. That's what makes gangstalking a failure, because the whole point of gangstalking is not just to depopulate, not just to harvest and siphon energy. The whole point of gangstalking is to prevent future generations from knowing how corrupt their governments really are, and it never works. It never works, okay? So it will never be successful. Holocausts always end up being revealed because there are too many people. There are always, and there will always be, too many people alive to tell the tale. And too many souls have been purified by grief and fed wild amounts of energy that are backing up the people that are alive and that are left behind by this. Wild amounts of energy. Okay. Instead, the energetic wars continue to rage in something of a downward spiral, with the energetically addicted narcissists and power players refusing to quit, forcing future generations further away from spirit and soul, and thus destiny. Okay. So, heavy subject. I'm not even done yet, okay? Now, I've already explained how harvesting and siphoning is natural, but let me get to this first point first. Number one, magic involves borrowing energy on top of what one already has. TIs and marginalized people have less to borrow because they're able to harvest energy from their oppressors passively. If we took our magic and rituals as seriously as our oppressors did, there'd be in a lot of problems. We are steered away from ritualism or crashed into it for a reason. We have more energy, not just because we're more authentic and agreeable, but because of what has been done to us. So that's point number one. Point number two, there is a reason why successful people prefer enemies to friends. Friends and loved ones siphon off each other constantly, and healthy relationships are dependent on constantly replenishing the energy used rather than ghosting or lack of reciprocity or one-sided relationship. That's that tyranny that Robert Greene was talking about in the Laws of Power, right? And as healthy as replenishing energy is, the lack of hierarchy and even self-preservation, and as healthy as replenishing energy is, there is a distinct lack of hierarchy and even self-preservation, which means more violent societies and cultures can come in and do their colonialism thing. And it's been done before. It's been done several times in human history. Yet, unhealthy harvesting and siphoning can and has led to evil manifestation work, trafficking, abuse, enslavement, and colonialism. So this is a difficult balancing act to get right at the best of times, all right? Number three, the more marginalized you are, the more likely you are to be energetically abundant. And unfortunately, the more likely your oppression is of keeping you that way. In turn, however, self-preservation instincts may be somewhat impaired, as empathy is one more thing weaponized to harvest energy. So as energetically abundant as we are, TIs and marginalized folks, this is balanced out, unfortunately, with a lack of self-preservation, and with authenticity, and with, you know, empathy, the desire to be agreeable. You know, and this is the thing, like empathy, kindness, like understanding things and not wanting to retaliate. All of these are noble, admirable qualities. They are higher qualities. But unfortunately, they are used against us in order to harvest our energies over and over again. We're a never-ending supply of energy, both physically and emotionally, to people who lie and delude the rest of the world into, you know, into believing that we have no value. It's wild. It's wild as fuck. All right. Now, this is where I get into providing solutions to all of this. Okay. This is the thing. Now let's get into this. Oh, let's get into it, baby. To defend ourselves against this, these are a few requirements, okay? Number one, we must limit any surface level desires. Again, our oppressors are at a deficit spiritually and soul-wise. They're deficit in wisdom, and they are deficit in feeling like they've gotten what they wanted, right? Which leads them to be overly identified with the physical. In turn, this creates a vacuum of never-ending desire within our abusers that constantly needs to be satiated. And a never-ending desire usually leads to never-ending envy. So never-ending desire is never-ending grief. Never-ending grief leads to never-ending envy. And that's exactly what causes this hierarchy of energy siphoning and harvesting, right? So keep your desires few, long-term, and inscrutable to your enemies. And also ensure your desires are informed by real, actual love. Okay? Keep your desires minimal. When you keep your desires minimal, you lessen your envy and you lessen your grief. When you lessen your desires, you lessen your grief, and you lessen your grief, you lessen your envy. When you are not envious, you're not at a deficit. So that's important to focus on, right? And real actual love is a lot more positive and a lot more powerful than you think it is. That leads me to my second point. Focusing on what you love to do, feel, and be are absolutely an unbeatable trifecta. Love is unbeatable when it comes to shit like this, okay? Because these are not the things that give you dopamine highs or make you so happy that you're terrified. Love is something that you enjoy, but that you know, if it was taken away from you, it wouldn't cause you abject pain or anything. It would, you know, and especially not for the long term. For me, it's the occult. As much as I feel at home with the occult, I've lived without the occult before, and I've had many moments of happiness, even without this thing that I love. Even without this thing that I truly love. Like, I've had moments of happiness, I've had moments of joy before. That's what I mean. When you love something, you can liberate it when it's time to liberate it. Or you can keep it by you when it's time to keep it by you. It will not, love does not imprison you. It does not imprison you, and it never will imprison you, right? And I've even been more successful and active without the occult at one point. So love is one thing that you can transfer from one thing to another, but invariably it gives you dignity, it gives you sovereignty, it gives you joy from a deep-seated level, as well as you being more romantic and selfless in general. Love is a wonderful thing that strengthens you. It does not take power away from you. It gives it to you. It gives you inherent power, right? And love connects you to a destiny that your abusers cannot and will not take away from you. They may be able, you know, when you have love in your life, when you have real love in your life, they can try to take it away from you, but they can never and will never do it. They can change the nature of your destiny, but that's all they can change. And even then, that's being optimistic. And the wonderful thing is, you don't need other people to have love in your life. You can have it anytime. It's right there, waiting for you to use. Okay? Number 3 is to boost your knowledge. Travel more, learn more, read more, digest more, watch more YouTube videos, look at more stuff on Google. Like, expand your mind to the ways of the world as much as you possibly can. What that does is that boosts your rational mind, it boosts your clarity, and also it gives you the strength to fight. The more intelligent that you are, the more knowledge that you actually have, and the more you put your boots to the ground and your mind in a book, the more strength that you actually gain from that. So boost your knowledge, okay? That way, when that anger comes up inside you, you know exactly how to use it, right? And you don't let it control you, all right? Number 4, obviously, physical care. It does involve looking after your health. More than anything, it involves looking after your physical health. But there's a specific way that you have to do it. With women, you have to focus on your health in a way that actually gives you joy. You know the feeling that you get from an orgasm? When you take care of your body, it has to give you that same feeling of having an orgasm, of being in that steady receivership energy. Now, weightlifting can actually give you that. That's one exercise that can give you that. But whatever exercise you do, it has to have that orgasmic feeling, like continuing on in a loop. That is what the kind of workouts you should do, right? Anything that feeds that sustained, prolonged, like orgasm feeling, that's what you need to work out, you know, in order to feed, right? So when it comes to you being a woman, or you being a femme, or you having feminine energy, feeding your joy through your healthcare is going to be absolutely paramount, because especially if you are a trans man or you are a woman, right, a cisgendered woman, you need to feed your joy, because it's those joys that, you know, when it's recycled in your body, it can rejuvenate you and it can replenish your energy. So as a woman, it's about feeding your joy. As a man, it's about feeding your prowess. It's about feeding your reproductive energy. It's about feeding your strength. Once again, when you feed your strength, it repeats on itself, because you're not shooting it off into a woman, right? So when you focus on your reproductive energy and you focus on replenishing that, and you circulate that energy throughout your body constantly, you are strengthening yourself and you are retaining your nutrients. So when with men taking care of their body, it's really about your sexuality, your sexual prowess, when it comes to men taking care of themselves. With women, it's more about joy and it's more about feeling good, because it has to balance out the pain that we're born with internally. But with men, it's to build up your strength. Do you understand what I mean? And especially your sexual strength. If you're a man or you're a masculine, even as a trans woman, like, building up your strength is going to be very, very important. All right. Now, when it comes to emotional care, physical care is more about sex and emotional care is more about gender, right? Physical care is more about the body and emotional care is more about the gender that's inherent behind that body. Do you understand? So if you are feminine energy, if you have feminine energy, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, trans or cis, right? If you have feminine energy, if you are more abundant in feminine energy, in order to care for yourself emotionally, it involves being physically present. It involves surrounding yourself with things that, you know, that are related to your hobbies or related to your values or related to things that truly interest you. Okay, this is especially important for anybody with feminine, predominantly feminine energy. For anyone predominantly masculine, it's important to surround yourself with information. Anything that gives you additional knowledge in your life is something that you should surround yourself with. I'm not going to suggest you live in a fucking barracks, because that's not going to help matters. Okay. Yeah. I'm not suggesting you live in a barracks, because that's not going to help matters. And living in a barracks, by the way, does not feed your knowledge. It doesn't automatically make you smarter. But you, in order to care for yourself emotionally, surrounding yourself with means of communication and intellectually feeding yourself, that's going to be very, very important for your growth emotionally, and to protect yourself emotionally, to fortify yourself so that you're not susceptible to vampires. Okay, as a masculine energy, I don't care if you're a man or a woman, cis or trans, what sexuality you are. Develop your knowledge and develop your communication. Okay, now number 6 is self-defense is crucial. And I'm not just talking about physical self-defense, I'm also talking about emotional self-defense. These things are crucial. And our abusers, we deal with people who hate themselves because of how much they need our emotion, attention, and validation to sustain themselves, and how violent and abusive they can get from us having the temerity to withdraw. Being prepared to defend yourself when they come knocking is absolutely vital. And again, it's not just physical self-defense that you need to be prepared for. It's also emotional self-defense. Now, how do you defend yourself emotionally? Well, talked about the physical and emotional care. Those are 2 ways. The third way is gaining knowledge, like I talked about in number 3. And hold on, I'm trying to remember the 4th way. The 4th way is in something surprising, right? It's going to surprise you when I tell you this. But the 4th way in which you guard yourself against emotional attack is through actually immunizing yourself with a little bit of negativity. Let me give you an example, right? King Louis, during the French Revolution, at the time of the French Revolution, he referred to the peasants that were revolting and rising up against the French aristocracy and the French royalty and the French nobility as slingshots. That's how King Louis, the Sun King, referred to the revolutionaries below. He referred to them as slingshots. What the French revolutionaries did is they took that original thing that was meant to be a slur and they turned it into a source of empowerment. You understand? Like, a lot of people call TIs crazy and say that we're paranoid schizophrenic. So what I've done in my life personally is I've said, okay, you want to say I'm paranoid schizophrenic, right? Let's have a brain scan. Let's have a CT scan or an MRI scan showing the parts of the brain that have been damaged. Because apparently, in order to cause paranoid schizophrenia, the CR1 part of the brain has to be damaged. Show me on a brain scan where the paranoid schizophrenia is. You understand? And they've called me mad before. So what I've done is I've made sure that they could not predict my movements, or they could not predict what I was going to do next, or I went out of my way to make sure that I did things that they didn't understand. Because when you do that, they're blind to everything else that you're actually doing. As long as they're validated in their negative opinions of you, you can take that. It's like they give you ready-made insults to turn to your advantage. This is what I mean by immunization. You need a little bit of that negativity that the world feeds you with, and then you turn it around and you empower yourself with it. Black people are masters at this. The amount of slurs that have been aimed in our direction, that we've been able to turn around and use to empower ourselves, is crazy. That's one way of emotional self-defense. That's just one example. Emotional self-defense, it means using, like, self-defense is not about knocking somebody the fuck out. That's not what it's about. It's about using the weight of somebody's violence against you against them. What is the one thing that you learn? When somebody's got you in a corner, you use their own weight against them and you push back. That's exactly what you do with emotional self-defense. You use the weight of other people's own violence against them. Like for me, for instance, right? Like I do live sometimes when I need to vent about gang stalking, right? So, you know, every time I do a live and I need to vent, I don't just say, oh, these people are assholes. I give information that will help other TIs as well. I don't just fucking talk. Do you understand what I mean? I use their own weight, the weight of their own shit against them. That's what you do. Now, they try to do that with me and it doesn't work for the simple reason that they are the aggressors. It doesn't work if you are an aggressor towards somebody else. It doesn't work. All right? But that's what I'm talking about when I talk about self-defense. It's emotional self-defense. It's physical self-defense as well. So learning physical self-defense, like learning the basics of that, is going to be important as well. Because like I said before, like there are some TIs who have ended up trafficked, unfortunately. So learning self-defense is absolutely crucial. I just want to let you guys know, right? Like number 6, if something happens to you, it's not your fault. A lot of people say that, oh, you know, because you didn't defend yourself or because you didn't do it, it's your fault. No, it's not your fucking fault. It's the fault of the people who attack you. It's as simple as that. The people who are responsible for their own behavior are the people who engage in that behavior. Therefore, if somebody attacks you or somebody handles you in a way that you're not supposed to be handled, it's their fucking fault. It's as simple as that. But self-defense may give you an edge. Another form of emotional self-defense is don't be too polite. Don't be too quick to be nice to people. Now, with me, I like to be friendly. I like to talk to people. I like to say, hey, how you going? Like, I've always been that way ever since I was a kid. But the truth of the matter is that this world will not see you the way you see yourself. Ice Cube, right? This world does not see you in the way that you see yourself. So don't be too nice to people, especially do not be too nice to people, because they could easily be using that to weaponize against you. And I don't care how attracted you are to somebody. I don't care how much you like somebody. They got to prove themselves to you just like everybody else. That's another form of self-defense emotionally. With people that you like, we give them the benefit of the doubt way too fucking often. Like with people that we actually like, we give them the benefit of the doubt way quicker than we would do with somebody that we're not attracted to, that we don't have anything in common with. No, I don't care how much you like somebody. They have to prove themselves to you just like everybody else. Do not be too nice. If they want your energy, because again, social interaction, you're siphoning and you're harvesting energy from social interaction just by being cool with people. Make them work for it. Especially if you're a woman or you're a femme, make them work for it, man. And I used to be like, well, you know, why not just be nice to people? Why not just be like, no. Maybe in a relationship you can afford to be a bit more transparent, but when you're first meeting people, make them work for it. I don't care how much you like them. Make them work for it. And I'm not even just talking about romance. I'm talking about friendships as well. Make them work for it. Emotional self-defense. All right. This is, you know, skills to use not just as a targeted individual, but if you belong to any marginalized or fringe communities, these are the tools that you should use. All right. Now, I've given you the pro tip, haven't I? Using symbolic weapons against you to your advantage and an evocative part of your personal brand. Again, like marginalized people, you know, if you're a TI but you're not black, or you're not a woman, or watch us, watch how we work, and use that towards your targeting. It's foolproof. It works every fucking time. So yeah. So another pro tip is, in terms of energy harvesting, alternate between starvation, energy starvation, and force feeding your energy to the point where they can't take it. So starvation means like ignoring them, pitying them, mocking them. That's you giving your enemies emotional starvation. And then force feeding your energy to the point where they get scared, meaning evidence collection, making their abuse. Like in my case, I do astrology and tarot. I make the abuse of my enemies part of what I do. In fact, that's the whole reason I started Empress Justice Tarot to begin with. It was because of the gangstalking. So that's me force feeding them more energy than they want. That's what I'm doing. And they do that with us anyway. All I've done is I've taken, you know, the tactics against marginalized people and TIs, and I've repurposed them. You see how I do that shit? All right. Okay. So that is the whole video. If you have made it this far, if you've made it this far, I want to thank you for sticking with me through this introductory video of Empress Justice Magick as a subsection of Empress Justice Astrology. I want to thank you for taking a walk on the dark side with me. And I want to thank you for your continued support. Once again, sales are open. Go ahead and check that out. I've also done astrological forecasts for Barony, for all 12 signs on Empress Justice Tarot, and the astrological forecast on Empress Justice Astrology right here. If you want to have a look at that, you can have a look at that. My advice though is that the best way to get a picture of what's going on in the month, go to February. Go to the February forecast on Empress Justice Astrology and the February forecast for all 12 signs on Empress Justice Tarot, okay? So with that, I am going to love and leave you guys. I have been Empress Justice. Peace out, love and darkness. Bye-bye, my darlings.